Welcome back, Runers. I reached level 60 yesterday, so it's time to update the guide and share what I've learned. In this guide I'll cover what stats you need, fast versus slow weapons, talents, rotations for single target and AoE, macros and add-ons, and finally some issues with Runemaster. And at the end, there's also a quick leveling tip. Everything is time-stamped, I hope this will help you. Alright, what stats do you need? Pretty simple. While you're leveling, you'll mostly focus on getting agility and in some cases spell power. The reason is that at level 20 you'll get this passive talent, which will increase your spell power by 25% of your attack power. And also you will get more hit and spell hit rating too. So keep stacking agility, it's very important. And just so you know, 1 agility equals 1 attack power, and 1 strength also equals 1 attack power. But remember, agility also gives us crit, armor, dodge, and most importantly, the hit rating from our talent. 1 strength only gives attack power. Next up, weapon speed. I did a few tests and here are the results. First up, just normal auto attack swings for 2 minutes with ice and fire weapon engravement on a single target. Obviously the quicker auto attacks give us more weapon engravement procs, so better average damage is the conclusion here. Next up, I did a basic rotation that only had rune blades and Primordial Blast in it, and I did that also for 2 minutes. And here we'll start to see that the damage gap is getting bigger and bigger. Moving on, AoE burst test. I did a very basic rotation during Zenith to see how many weapon procs I get with fast weapons versus how many I see with slow weapons. Here are the results, and this is where we really see the difference in weapon speed. We get a lot more earth engraving triggers on fast weapons, and I did like 15 tries on this with slower and fast weapons, and the damage on the slower weapons was always lower than with fast weapons. And this is only with 6 enemies, so keep in mind, when you're doing an actual dungeon, the mob pools will be way bigger than that. And earth engraving will deal even more damage with faster weapons. So I definitely recommend going fast weapons. And also notice that weapon damage does not change the rune blade damage. Even though in the passive talent it suggests that we should get 50% offhand damage. I don't know, maybe seems like it doesn't work properly. Alright, let's go over the talents real quick. Early on you want to grab Eternal Magic for your Runeblade resets and for the lower cooldown on Primordial Blast. And Laystone Springs for better mana regeneration. On the class tree you want to grab longer Zenith duration and then get the Blade Rift talent for more magic damage. The most important talent in the class tree that you'll get is this one, Decoder. But keep in mind you'll get this very late, so don't worry about it too much right now. The last important talent right here is this one called Power Engraving. It's a good CD for you and your party. I would save this one for bosses, because they really take a lot of time to kill right now. But overall, it doesn't really matter what you pick on early on. I recommend going with movement speed right here, and this one, 5% more weapon engraving triggers. And over here in the spec tree, you want to get Leyborn talent, so you get 3 stacks of Runic Brand instead of 1 for better AoE damage. And after that, either go with 10% haste buff, or go with the Earth, Wind and Fire if you decide you want to do dungeon grinding. Fist of the Ancient is something that you don't want to pick unless you put these 3 talents into it. I'm personally not a big fan of Fist of the Ancients, more about this later on. And after you have these core talents, the right path of the spec tree, this here increases the damage of your AoE. And the left side is more about increasing your fire engraving damage. So Fist of Power and Steam Conjurer is for dungeons, and Echoes of Eternity and Rule Knot is for single target, so better for raiding. This talent right here, Runic Tempest, it's just awful. Don't waste the point in that. I don't know why that's here. And this one, Lay Power, it's not a bad CD. It's just in my testing you get better consistent AoE damage with Steam Conjurer, and you're also not depending on the pull style of your tank. So Lay Power, it might be interesting when the mobs live long enough, so you can really get benefit out of it. So maybe in M+, it will be better. We'll have to wait and see. Okay, that's for the talents. What about my macros? I keep it very simple. I have Runic Brand macro together with Zenith, so I don't have to press Zenith on my own. And I have another Runic Brand macro together with Fist of Power. The reason is that once I'm out of Zenith, I want to go into Fist of Power to increase my Earth Engraving trigger chance and extra attack speed. I do not recommend pressing Fist of Power and Zenith together because you already have 100% trigger with Zenith. So use Fist of Power when Zenith is on CD. In single target, I think you can just you can press it together. And finally, the last macro I like to use is just casting Warpdagger together with a Primordial Blast. This macro I only use while being in stealth, so basically I'll wait for the tank to gather all the mobs, I'll go in stealth, I shoot my Warpdagger together with my blast, because I want that 10% increased magic damage buff. And you only get that if you use Warpdagger in stealth. Okay, that's for the macros. What about add-ons? I keep it very simple. I use Bartender for my bars, Shadowed Unit Frames for my portrait and my target, and I have weak auras for my Zenith bar and an icon that shows me when I'm low on mana or if I'm high on mana. There's links in the description down for the weak auras, so you can just copy and paste them if you're interested in those. What's a good race for Runemaster? Well, since we cannot choose Troll for the Berserk buff, I would say probably Orc could be a strong contender because the racial gives us attack and spell power, which is pretty much perfect for us. But I'd just say pick whatever you like. Okay, let's talk about rotation. For AoE, I'll put Earth on my main hand and Fire on my offhand. Single target, I use Ice on my main hand and Fire on my offhand. I did some testing, could not really see a difference between the weapon engravement order, so I keep it that way so I can switch easily my main hand weapon engravement buff when I need to do single target. I know that you can put 2 engravements on both weapons, but it becomes quite tedious to switch, especially when you're in a dungeon and you don't want to waste too much time with equipping and unequipping weapons. Let's take a look at the AoE rotation now. First we go into stealth and quickly shoot out our Warpdagger to get the 10% magic buff. Then you can either do a Primordial Blast, or if you're in range of the target already, you can just straight up start with a Runic Brand together with Zenith. And what's important for AoE is that you constantly burst your Runic Brand stacks with Runeblade. So apply Runic Brand stacks, burst them open with Runeblade, hope that you get a reset on Runic Brand, apply the Runic Brand again, and keep resetting your Runeblade charges with the Primordial Blast. And you just do this over and over and over again. Once you're out of Zenith and the mobs are still alive, you can cast Fist of Power and get more Earth engraving triggers. If the mob group is already dead, then save Fist of Power for the next pull. And in single target, Fist of the Ancient becomes a bigger priority. So keep Fist of the Ancient and Primordial Blast on cooldown. Use Runic Brand and Runeblade as a filler until Fists or the Blast gets off CD. And when you're fighting a boss, make sure to use your Power Engraving talent. It's a good DPS buff for the whole group. Now when it comes to the palm sigils that you can use while being stealth, you can use them on your opener if you find the time, but if your tank is just pulling fast and you don't really have the time to cast them, don't worry too much about it. It's fine without them. And that's pretty much it. Sadly, Engravement Runemaster doesn't really have a deep, interesting rotation. And I'd say even with the tattoo stance switching being more of a thing in the late game, the spec just feels very lackluster. Fist of the Ancient feels like half-baked and they didn't really think about it to include it in the AoE rotation. I would change it so that it can also burn a stack of Runic Brand or maybe recharge your Runeblade charges. But yeah, it is what it is. Okay, that's pretty much all I wanted to share. If you find any mistakes in the video, let me know. Also, a quick tip for leveling. When you get to level 50, you'll notice that it will get a lot slower. So that's why I recommend doing the new zone at the very end. Because the new zone has a lot of quest chains that are easy to do and give you a lot of experience, way better than the normal end zones. So if you're an Alliance player, you can start the chain on an NPC right here, near the North Gate, and make your way up to Pale Reach. For Horde, I'm sorry, but I don't know how you get there. It's this area called Drukthar. Alright, that's it. Peace.
Wyvern, Father. Blizzard will shut down the server anyway.